Joseph Daniel Clemmons.
And what years were you at YDS?
I was here from 65 to 69.
When you were looking at divinity schools, what made you choose Yale Divinity School?
Well, its name and its proximity to where I was. I had attempted to go to Divinity School direct from College, Long Island University in 1952, but decided I couldn't afford it, or the family couldn't afford it, and so I went into a teaching career. But then beginning to pastor in Norwalk, and observing some of my colleagues there in Norwalk, and in particular Henry Yordan, who pastored the First Congregational Church, was so impressive to me as a dynamic influence in the city. I decided I needed more training, and so I applied to Yale Divinity School and was accepted.
What did you find most unexpected about it when you got here?
Everything. In that I didn't know what to expect, so that all that I did receive and participate in and experience was so particularly new for me. So it was just being here in seminary was an aha experience.
Do you think some of our questions have just been about identity, since this is a focus of this year at Yale? Did you find your identity as African American, did that impact your time here or your initial experience here?
Yes, most definitely. That was during the decade of the 60s. And it was during that time that I also participated in some recruiting of African American students, and we traveled to South Carolina to some of the universities, speaking with black students about coming to Yale, particularly those that were interested in ministry. And it was a concerted effort to get more African Americans to come to Yale. And I think we were somewhat successful at that time. And so trying to combine what was going on in the culture and trying to get some theological grounding for what was happening in the 60s, so that we could, in a more meaningful way, address what was happening out there in the culture. I found that extremely helpful because it helped me to clarify my thinking and to put some theological framework around what was going on during the decade of the 60s.
I think our classes benefited from your recruiting. I got here in '73, and I'm sure that some of my fellow African American students were probably recruits of yours. They were quite impressive students. Do you have any vivid memories of your time here? Just tell me some stories about your time here.
Well, I was in a 4-year program because I was pastoring in Norwalk and attempting to do seminary work. And so that was a challenge, doing both. An interesting challenge, nevertheless. Being exposed to the reading and to the teaching of the professors, Bill Meal in the preaching class, which for me was extremely important because I was preaching every Sunday, and the courses in psychology that I took. All and the theology courses that I took. All of those things were, for me, they were mind-blowing. They were mind-blowing to get that depth of understanding, because I was raised in the Pentecostal church, and I had been preaching since the age of 14. And in the Church of God in Christ, the Pentecostal denomination, well, you were not required to have seminary training. My father was a pastor and preacher. My older brother, was a preacher and a student at Union Theological, a graduate of Union Theological Seminary. My uncle in Virginia was a bishop and pastor, a couple of uncles. So, but they were really self-taught. And when I came to Yale to get the kind of depth of understanding that was required because of all the reading and writing we had to do, it was mind-blowing, but fantastic.
Fantastic. The rigor, just the intellectual.
Yes,
rigor.
Yes.
Yeah. You say you wrote this reflection. Can you share some of that with us?
I have no idea really what I wrote. It's been so long ago, so I don't. I'm not even sure now. I don't know whether you have a copy of it. So and I did not review it, but I'm sure it incorporated my life experiences as a pastor, as a state legislator. I served for 6 years in the Connecticut State Legislature, representing Norwalk, and I served as director of the Norwalk Area Ministry. We started a alcohol and drug rehabilitation program there in Norwalk. When I started seminary in '65, I was married and had 2 children. And as I've indicated, because of the influence of Henry Orden, I was just gung-ho like a horse ready to get out of the barn and run. So in my denomination, I served for 14 years as a jurist. It's the Judiciary Committee where we heard charges that were brought against clergy, and we had to make judgments about whether they were going to stay in their pastorate. So I served for 14 years as a jurist with my denomination. So I've been quite busy, and I'm excited that still at the age of 90 now, I'm able to continue preach every Sunday. I'm still pastoring. The church that my father planted 94 years ago in Brooklyn, New York. The church that I planted in Norwalk, I stayed there. We built it from the ground. We bought a burned out Episcopal church. It caught fire in 72, I think it was, and we were able to buy that shell, rebuild it. It's now valued at over maybe $3.8 million. And I stayed there 40 years, turned it over to another pastor. But for 14 of those years, I pastored 2 churches. The one in Brooklyn, my father, after my brother died in '99, I was there. And this is my 20th year there. And I'm hoping that this may be my last year. I'm helping my son. He gets his D-Min from Colgate that he's working on now, hopefully next year. But I'm hoping that he's working with me now and assisting in the ministry, and I'm hoping that maybe even by the end of this year, I might be able to turn that ministry over to him and actually retire.
They won't let you. My dad is 94 and still teaching his Sunday school class. They won't let him.
Is that right?
They won't let him quit.
It's great. It's a great feeling to be able to do that.
I think there's something in the spirit that keeps people going.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And I enjoy the challenge of sermon preparation and preaching most every Sunday. You know.
Is there anything else you want to share with us?
Except to say that I am intensely grateful for what I've received as a student at Yale Divinity School. I have been so inspired that I'm forever reading, and that was, of course, my brother, who also had a doctorate, was kind of my mentor, but he got me interested in reading, and then coming to Yale, I am just so grateful for the experiences that I've had here and for what it has instilled in me, and the love for books, the love for reading that I've gotten, as well as writing. I have not published. I have published a few articles, but I'm just so grateful for my life and what I've received, and for where I am now at the age of 90.
Thank you, Joseph. I really appreciate it.